Well, welcome to Did She Really Say That? I'm your host, Katrina Van Houston, and this is brought to you by the CreatHER method. This is a capacity-based planning designed specifically for women that are high earners, high achievers that are wanting a different way. We've been given the viewpoint of how business and productivity looks like, but what you're getting access to with the CreatHER method is the female perspective and what it looks like to build as a woman. So I'm excited for our conversation and our guest today because Serena is bringing to us this other piece of the puzzle. And I love this because there's such synergy in what we're bringing into this arena around, what is it that we're struggling with? What does the methodology that she's using, how does that help you tap in to understand how to make better decisions, how to regulate, how to feel more in control without being burnt out? So, Serena is a coach and an AM Stat certified Alexander Technique teacher. We'll get into what all that is because I was like, what the flock back when I first heard it. She works with high performing professionals who are good at control but exhausted. Anybody hear that? I know you're hearing this, right? But you're exhausted by the cost of it all. The people who look like they have it all together but live in chronic tension, high anxiety, and pain that no amount of pushing through seems to resolve. Everything seems to be failing them. Hi, Serena. That's been there, done that, right? So, Serena offers a way to move towards your goals in a way that keeps control intact while removing unnecessary strain. So, Serena, thank you so much for being here on Did She Really Say That? I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's just dive in for all of our listeners, for the women and the men that I know are listening to this. We're going to talk a little bit more to the women with Serena and I around this conversation. But what do you mean by, you work with people who are good at control? Because that feels like an oxymoron over here to me. So
Mm.
let's dive into a little more of like how that became like the central point of what you're offering in this world of life and business and change.
I do want to know what you mean by like the oxymoron piece, but what I mean when I say people who are good at control is like the people who really do look like they have it all together and like kind of do, like they're showing up to their appointments on time, they're not late, they're getting their work done by the deadline, like they're powering through, they're on top of it, right? They are the high achievers, they overall are feeling successful in their lives. They look successful from the outside, but they are so good at control that they are now suffering the consequences of that, the gripping, the holding, the kind of the tension that comes with being so controlled manifests as chronic pain, anxiety. And when I talk about anxiety, I'm talking about people who have like high functioning anxiety, right? There's anxiety that kind of keeps you from getting things done. And then there are people who use anxiety as a tool to motivate, which
Yep.
can be helpful to a point, right? But has consequences, right? And I don't necessarily need to list all the kind of like physical consequences and like wellness things that come with anxiety, but I think we can kind of imagine, right? The discomfort of it, the mental strain, just we can talk about just feeling kind of ill from anxiety, and just the chronic stress of it all, right? You're good at control, you have it together, but you maybe are afraid that you're going to burn out, or you don't even think you have capacity to do more because you don't know how you could push harder.
Yeah, I think that's when I say it's an oxymoron for me, is like a control's an illusion. Like there's
Mm,
this sense that we think we have control, but and until we can get really present in the moment of what we're doing at this moment, like right now, what you're sitting on, the chair you're sitting in, what your hands are doing, and get really present, a lot of times control is just a desire,
mm.
and a wish. But until you learn to surrender, only then I feel like for women do we actually gain more. The world isn't controlled, but do we gain more understanding and capacity to do more? So that was kind of like for me, it just felt like an oxymoron because control is a push, and well, for me as a woman, we're really a pull. So that was what I kind of dived into that. But you did talk about like high functioning anxiety. So what are some, I just like, is it more industries or there's certain industries that we see high anxiety performers, people that women, men that are just using that high level anxiety to as a motivator? Like, where do you see that show up in what type of industries?
Yeah, I mean, I think that high anxiety shows up, especially in corporate spaces and places where you are, having to really kind of put on a performance when you're on calls and you're in your meetings, and there's a little less like room to be kind of a fuller person. At least it seems that way from the outside. There's an effort to look like you have it all together, and you do, but where is the space to be more of a full person and have your own responses? And so I think we see that a lot in corporate spaces, and we're going to see
Yeah.
it in, at work. People who are, maybe interested in many things and trying to juggle a lot of projects, right? But I did want to go back to what you said about like the oxymoron of it all. And you're kind of already getting a little bit into like the core of my work, right? Where, the
Oops.
trick is,
No.
oops, the trick is that in order to have the control that you desire, you do have to let go of
Yeah.
control in the way that it's and the way that we maybe previously have defined it. Now, I
Yeah.
would argue that it is the road towards a more conscious control, because it's
Ooh,
not like you're giving up your ambition. You're not giving up your desire to do things.
correct.
It's not this ask of like, just let go of all of your wants and desires and
Yeah,
just
no,
we'll live on the
that's not it.
mountaintop.
Yeah,
Right?
that's not it at all. Like that's like I'm not
Right.
asking you to become like completely lazy and like unproductive in society. Like that's not what we're saying here either. So
But
yes.
that's the core of my work, where it's like, okay, well, how do we have our desires? How do we have our ambition? How do we see the goal, but care a little bit more about how you get there
Yeah.
than the end result? Can you trust that you're like on the path to where you want to go and like see it in your mind's eye, but be a little more with yourself, a little more grounded and able to respond in the moment, which ultimately gives you more control because you're
Yes.
not responding out of habit, you're not responding out of old patterns, you're not responding the way you think someone wants you to respond. You are
Yeah.
listening, responding to what is happening right there, which is ultimately more control when you're not gripping down on it.
Yeah, and I think the what I've heard around that for the listening, it's called active listening. So it's not waiting to
Mm-hmm.
respond to something somebody says, but actually actively listening to then craft the response instead of trying to
Absolutely.
be over that conversation. So I love this, which leads me into beautifully. We talked and we met, and you said I am as like I'm certified in the Alexander technique. I'm like, okay, why don't I know that? Like, I feel like I've been in this industry long enough. So let's dive into what is the Alexander Technique? How did it get created, and why you're such a passionate practitioner of this in helping high functioning, high achieving, high earning individuals in the space use this as a tool for themselves.
Yeah. So first off, just you don't have to know the Alexander technique in order to benefit from it, to use this practice. Yeah, exactly. Whew, thank goodness. It is just it's the foundation of the work that I offer. It's a
Okay.
kind of body first, mind body practice, and it's speaking to what I think most people, definitely you, but most people probably listening to this podcast kind of already know, that the mind
Mm,
body is this two-way street, right?
yes.
That it's always a back and forth. The mind body duality is an illusion, right? We think we can kind of get all up in the mind and focus here, or we can just do stuff with the body and it's not going to affect how we are thinking. And it's just not true. It's just not reality. And we're having more and more evidence to support this.
Mm,
Um, so the Alexander technique is my way of kind of approaching that and figuring out how to bring more of your consciousness, your focus, your attention to what's happening within you, to your body. Of course,
yes.
I'm speaking in our language has this duality, but it's all connected. So it's bringing your thought, your attention into your physicality so that you release all that excess tension, you move anxiety out, like through the body and out of it, so that you can be available to listen, to actively listen, to respond, and to, really be available with all the skills that you already have, right? I think that it's easy to the skills and the information you have when we get caught up in the moment of something high stress, right? When we feel like we feel like maybe if we have all the answers in advance, we'll be prepared, or if, right, if
I don't
we
know anybody like that in my life who's got to have everything figured out before they even take a step forward. I call that analysis paralysis, but like that is literally like one of the things that holds a lot of people back too.
Right, absolutely. And we can kind of talk about those concepts, but it's another thing to learn how to embody them,
Mm,
right? To figure out how to, in the moment, move and yourself in a different way, to hold yourself just kind of in a different way, sitting in a chair, standing in front of people, feeling more grounded and with the support of your own back, your own muscular skeletal system. It gives you data and confidence that tells you like, oh, I can respond in the moment, like, oh,
mm,
okay, like it's safe to trust that I can listen in the moment and respond to what's happening. I have what I need to do that, rather than this fear that you have to hold and prepare and know everything in order to do it well, right?
yeah.
And I'll just give a little background on Alexander technique.
Yeah, I was just gonna
It's
ask you, I'm like, has it
yeah.
always been in existence? Is there a little history? Does it tap into
There,
something?
yeah,
So
there
yes,
there is some
please do.
history. It's a little over 100 years old now. It's like the founder is F.M. Alexander, so he named it after himself. And he's from Tasmania, but Australia, got very popular in England. His whole backstory is that he continued to lose his voice. He wanted to be a speaker, an orator. He loved speaking Shakespeare monologues, but he kept losing his voice over and over again. And his advice from his doctors was, um, well, go on vocal rest. And he's like, okay. And he went on vocal rest, he'd get better. And then he'd go to talk again and he'd lose his voice. And he's like, okay, seems like I'm doing something when I'm speaking that is maybe like causing me to lose my voice. Can you help me figure out what it is? And they were like, no, we don't know. We have no idea. And so he decided to set about figuring it out for himself. And he basically kind of developed this method of building awareness, set up all these mirrors and started to kind of figure out, well, what am I doing when I'm going up in front of people in this like higher stress moment? He's performing, right? He's wanting to do well, right? Just trying to project. And he started to discover all these things that he was doing that was counterintuitively,
Mm.
not helping his performance. And then he, with more and more investigation, started to realize that that was present in just his daily life, but just to a lesser and
Interesting.
lesser degree. And so his work initially more popular people who needed help with kind of breath and performance, but grew to help people with chronic pain. And it is kind of this two-prong approach of, okay, what are the actual physical things that I need to do for me to be more available? Like, what are some things that I can, like physical adjustments, alignment, ideas that help me literally like feel better in my body? And then also, what is the approach of figuring out my habits, the things that I'm kind of unconsciously doing that are getting in the way of something that I want to do? And so that's like the practice that he's developed. Because the tricky part is that we can be like, oh, okay, when I'm speaking, I tend to have a habit of throwing my head back. Okay, well, I just won't do that. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way,
Right.
right? Like we can discover the habit, and that's a first step. But how do we actually make that change?
Mm.
So Alexander Technique has become really popular in performing arts programs. It's where I was introduced to it. You'll see a Alexander Technique teacher in every department at Juilliard, for example. But I am more interested in bringing this work to people who are not necessarily in the performing arts, but can really benefit from the powerful kind of performance tool that this provides, and the grounding and the leadership ability that it gives you when you are able to be calm, grounded, responsive in the moment.
So what I heard something that was interesting in what you just shared with me. So there was two things that kind of popped up consciously or unconsciously. It was definitely mirror work. I find like so
Mm-hmm.
much time we don't actually look in the mirror. We use it just as um like a pass by. Like we don't actually like look to observe. And I definitely know this amongst like women when I talk to them. I ask, when you look in the mirror, do you see yourself or do you see everything you have to do? Like just you're just brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, and you're actually not seeing yourself in what you're doing. And I know that like I think when you bring this from the world of the arts and movement and self-critique, my other thought behind that too was could potentially we become too critical of every action that we're doing because then it feels like we're trying to find every nuance and fix it. So I was like, is there the potential in, going too far with this and then over analyzing what is causing us to feel like we're out of control or losing control? And have you seen that in some of your work and what are some of the ways that we kind of just balance that back out again or soften that back again.
It's definitely the danger zone, right?
Okay.
Like you've gone too far when you start to nitpick and like get critical and you're trying to fix every little thing. And
Yeah.
usually I find that when that happens, we've lost the big picture. So a
Oh,
big piece is always coming back to the big picture. Are we looking at the whole self? Not just like one little piece. So it's always like, oh, if we're getting like, it's tough because sometimes you have to get in the details, right? You have to get in
it's
the details and be like, what's going on here? And then
yep.
you do have to take a step back and like, okay, well, what is that in the context?
Yeah.
Right, in the context of my whole self. And so that's just a red flag of like when that starts to come up, it's like, oh, we've gone too far in one direction, and I always pull it back for people. And it's
And
it's
and
amazing.
that's why working with you is important because if we were to do this on our own, we do need the reflection. We need someone to guide us through this. Otherwise, for the some of us, we'll get into this and then we'll take it down a rabbit hole, right? I know some of
Absolutely.
you, my listeners, are out there that will absolutely do this. That's why it's like with Serena, you want to have her guidance because this is somebody to bounce something off of, someone to reflect back to you. And I think that's the beauty of the work that Serena does with this technique is that she's a reflection. She reflects back what she's seen, and that helps, give a sense of like, okay, I'm not going insane. I'm not doing this, and like, and that's the that peace of mind really I think that comes with working with you inside of this technique. So what brought you to this work? So you talked about a little bit from the arts industry, sounds like dance for our audience. Share a little bit about that and then how you brought this in. What had you really say I need this more, because you touched up on it a little bit, but how did you bring this more into the business world?
Well, I'm honored that you think that I could be a dancer.
You totally should be a dancer.
I actually felt very uncoordinated, which is why this work was really powerful for me
Interesting.
because that was not like where I came from. I am not a body first person, like inherently, which is
Hmm.
why this work was so powerful for
I
me.
never got that in our conversation. I would have swore up and down you
It's
were
because I've been
movement
doing this
first.
work.
And
It's no,
it's emanating
it
from
truly
you.
is this practice for me. And I think that I was always seeking out some kind of mind-body
Mm,
connection because since I was young, I was very much into singing. I was in choir a lot. So there's something about voice work that bypasses a lot of the like over analytical, overthinking stuff that I can get into. I'm not having to like move my body around a lot, but I'm like, it's very embodied, right? Using
mm,
your voice.
yeah.
Um, so I came through with kind of voice work and music, and I went to school for music education and uh, switched I wanted, I was toying with voice performance, and then ultimately ended up going with theater, and that's how I found Alexander technique and I was like, oh, this is the thing. This is what I've been looking for. And I don't perform now because what I kind of realize is that I love theater, love performance, love the storytelling of that work. But for me, it was like I was just seeking
Mm,
this mind-body connection. The mind body's always connected, but we're not like always aware, right? So it's bringing awareness to that. And I talk about like relief from anxiety and chronic pain, all these things, but what I found was a lot of joy,
mm.
to be embodied and present and like my mind go more quiet and really be in the room. I was like, whoa,
Hold on, I'm gonna
like
stop you right here. All of my audience to just listen. How many of you would like to quiet your mind, have joy? I think joy resonated. Like you light up in the world of joy, right? And just know your voice. There's such a power in your voice, even right now, as we're talking about this. And I think that's what a lot of women are like, I don't feel like I have a voice. I've been on podcasts, I've talked to a lot of women, they're like, I just don't feel like I have my voice. And so there's this sense that in working with you, for the women that are listening, there's an opportunity to find the joy, find their voice. And so I feel like that is a huge strength
absolutely.
around you and what you're doing. So
Yeah, and just to add to that, sorry to interrupt you,
no, please.
but it's like that's the reason why it's worth looking in the mirror, doing that like uncomfortable piece of like looking in the mirror and being like, here's what's going on right now, seeing yourself in the way that maybe you don't see yourself normally, thinking about how you're being perceived, thinking about how you're showing up in the room. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to look at that
Yeah.
stuff. We don't naturally want to do those things. But on the other side of that like uncomfortable awareness piece is this opportunity to, I know it's like, is to be with yourself
Yeah.
in a really powerful and I think joyful, pleasant way. And I talk about being with your own back, right? Having your own back in a way that it's not just grounded in a way where it's like, oh, I feel my feet on the floor and I am, trying to be
Yeah.
here. It's like, no, I feel the strength of my own back as I step into the room and trusting that in a way that feels really good.
I hear so many of my women sighing on this, like just listening, like, thank you for giving me permission to like feel back into my body. Because I feel like a lot of women, we've been taught to shut down from the neck down. And so I think even in your saying, it's like I crave the mind body connection again. And I know so many women out there that are craving that and they just don't know where it is for them. But we as women typically live in our bodies more so than the men do. And then we take it up to the brain. So I'm really fascinated for what you're doing. And I love, the work you're doing for this. And I could keep going with you. Like, I know we could just spend hours talking
I
about this.
know.
So, the quick thing before we jump off and before we kind of wrap up what you got going, I can't believe we're almost out of time already. I feel
That's
like we should
crazy.
be doing this more. Um, so first things first, so I always ask a question and then I'm going to have you talk about like how people can connect with you. So my first question for you is the podcast is, did she really say that?
Hmm.
So inside of your work, have you ever worked with a client or even a team and they've either said, did she really do that or did she really say that? Is there a moment that you can share with our listeners that had you be like, yeah, because that for me is those moments that women really step up and into and they either challenge or say something that has a different perspective. And I want to welcome that to our audience.
Yeah, I've said a version of this in like a few classes. And it always gets a pretty good reaction. But essentially, it's if trying harder was going to work, it would
Mm.
have worked by now.
Mic drop.
Yeah, and we get pretty far by putting a
Mm.
lot of effort and trying really hard and doing more and pushing through. And I think women can really relate to this, especially like kind of being like underneath, making sure everything is working, maybe not even taking credit for it as often, right? Right?
Once or
Um,
twice where that's happened to me in my career of different moments. Like I'm not good. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Same. Done that all the time.
And
Yeah.
but tr effort has a ceiling. There's a
Mm.
certain point where like more effort isn't going to get you there. It's more of the same. And at a certain point, there's a time when you have to stop and say, okay, can I do this differently? Can I do this in a different way? And
Mm.
that is where like awareness and your attention and your focus, those don't have the same ceilings. These don't
Yeah.
have so yeah, that's where what I would say is that, if Hardy, excuse me, it's like it's so frustrating to me personally. I'm tripping over it because it's where I came from. Where like I didn't have that deep embodiment. Like I got to where I could get with working harder, and then it starts to have diminishing returns, and then even starts to not just have side effects, but can even get in the way of the progress you're trying to make. And I think that shows up as like things like performance anxiety, which is something I was dealing with at the time when I was in school and when I was introduced to the Alexander technique. And you start to be told by people around you, like, oh, don't try so hard, just, just relax. Like, it's fine. Why are you worrying? Right. And it's incredibly unhelpful.
Yes.
But they are speaking to something real where it's like, okay, if trying harder isn't going to work, and if I can't push through this, what do I got to do instead? And there is a way. There is a way to care about what you want to do, to move forward, but to care a little bit more about yourself and about how you show up.
I love that. And so for all of our audience listening, you do have a special gift for our audience that you can share with them. And I know you've been working on the techniques, building out some areas of your business. And so for all my entrepreneur women out there, this is like Serena's actually showing you kind of what it is. Like there's a lot of times that in business we have things almost ready. And so we're going to talk about like what she's going to have ready for you at the time that this gets, put into your hot little hands as a download. So let's talk about what it is you're gifting our listeners to help them just start understanding what this technique is, the work that you do, and how they can, connect with you.
Yeah. So right now on my website is available a free download, like a 3 minute kind of audio check-in. And I did it 3 minutes on purpose because the idea is that even 3 minutes can make a difference, right? And it's really also hard to argue that you don't have 3 minutes to give yourself to check in with your own back and with where you are in the room. So free downloadable audio, 3 minute check-in. Maybe you do it a few times a day or just once because you only have 3 minutes. And then the additional kind of package offer is that I'm going to have something that costs like, I don't know, the cost of a coffee, even though coffee is kind of expensive in New York right now. Uh, but maybe, yes, a cup of coffee
No,
will
we're
get
not worried
you.
about that. We're just know you're going to have something amazing on your website. So talk to me
Yeah,
about
it'll
that.
be a nice package of several audio, guided audios and some video content that gives you the opportunity to kind of check in with yourself. It's
Mhm.
kind of like resetting after sitting at your desk for a while. There'll be like a lie down on the floor, nice and like nice easy reset for your
Yes.
back. Yeah. Nothing too strenuous, not like a big yoga class or anything, but you'd be surprised. A little bit of movement can go a long way. And when you have the guidance of me on an audio or a video, it's about bringing your attention to that movement in a
Mm.
really different way. So rather than just mindlessly kind of stretching, you're like, oh, let me kind of move around. That's great. Don't not do that. But doing it with intention is going to be a really different experience.
I 100% agree. And, I invite my audience is that, if there's something that Serena said to you that resonated, that you had go, man, I've been looking for that, or geez, heck, like that sounds like something that I could really benefit from at any point in your business, or you're even thinking about, when I heard Serena talking about that, I thought about my friend. And so my request is share this out with a friend, download what you need from her, from Serena, connect with her. Because here's what I truly know is that every woman that comes onto this podcast, did she really say that, is connected to each other, and we are connected to you. So, from you, if you have any questions, definitely reach out, engage with our podcast, leave a comment. I'll make sure Serena gets it. Give us a rating. But this is really where, as women, we raise our collective voice and say, yeah, she really did say that. So thank you, Serena, so much for your time.
Thank
Any
you so
last
much.
words for our audience before we call this show a wrap?
I just want to say, let out whatever air you've been holding. Just exhale first and then take a little breath. You got this.
Words of wisdom right there from one woman to another. Take a deep breath, exhale,
No, I said that on
another breath.
purpose because
Yeah.
everyone says take a breath, but sometimes that stacks on top. So just let it go and then breathe.
Excellent. All right, ladies, you know what you do. Listen, share, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
If today's conversation hit home, don't just listen, take the next step. Download the free Create Her Authentically guide at createherplanner.com/free and discover how to build your business in alignment with your natural rhythm. And if you love this episode, please leave a review. It helps more women find the show. I'll see you in the next episode.